Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Cove. So first off, I would like to thank Straddling for their sponsorship of the Lunch and Learn series and overall support of UCI Applied Innovation. It's my pleasure to welcome today's speakers, Garrett Brown and Colin Coggins. Garrett and Colin are the creators of the Sales Shift, a unique philosophy on growing sales and revenue that focuses on emotional intelligence, personal development, and building positive, contagious sales cultures. Most recently, Garrett and Colin built and led the sales team for Bitium, a B2B software as a service startup that was acquired by Google. They are here today to present on emotional intelligence and sales, to share ways to shift your mindset, objectives, and results in a way that will have an immediate impact on your sales and revenue outcomes. Welcome, Garrett and Colin.
All right.
Testing. It's on. How's everybody doing?
All right.
Sorry, we couldn't hear. You heard him? How you guys doing? There you go. Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys for having us. It's fun to be here. We did this a couple of years ago, I feel like, when the Lunch and Learn thing was pretty new.
Yeah.
It was in a much smaller room, so this is a lot more exciting. So thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.
Haley did a great job of an introduction. So just to give a little bit more background, Colin and I combined have probably over 3 decades of sales experience building and growing sales teams across a variety of industries. As Haley said, our most recent success was a company that we took from zero to acquisition by Google just almost a year ago now.
Yeah.
And since then, we've been doing all kinds of different things. Colin is the Chief Revenue Officer at a company called Change, which is a green tech company that does last mile delivery vehicles, software that's related to that, and a whole bunch of other fun stuff.
Yeah, energy services.
Energy services. He's also the sales advisor at Techstars Los Angeles. I joined Google for a little bit to help with the transition, and since then, I've spent a lot of time investing in and advising startups here, both as a member of Tech Coast Angels in this building and on my own. And together we do a lot of different talks and working with different companies to do all kinds of things. So sales is our favorite subject.
You specifically left out USC, I'm assuming, because we're at UC.
That's true. We are in a higher education location here. We starting next year, we are going to be teaching sales for entrepreneurs at USC in the Grafe Center of the Marshall School for at least 3 semesters. So
thank you guys for
exciting.
Not booing. We appreciate that.
So I'll let Colin kind of give some background on our philosophy and what we do.
Yeah, it's just show of hands. How many people consider themselves in sales?
All right.
You guys are in the right room. Okay. So Garrett and I have a pretty distinct and different approach to sales than what you might be used to. So as we go through this, just keep this in mind. We are extremely passionate about sales to the point where we view it as a sport. And what we're going to try to do today is take you guys into the press box and really understand, at least in the next hour, like how we view this interaction between the customer and the salesperson and how you leverage what we call the finish line. And ultimately, we just need you guys to know that we are going to be showing up here as the antithesis of the typical salesperson. That's how we've built our career, that's how we've built our modality, and that's what we're really proud of. So if we go off on passionate tangents, or if we're just talking too much, if I go off on passionate tangents, just understand that the dichotomy between logic and emotion is really the underlying theme behind what we're going to talk to you guys about today. And we'll dig in, and hopefully I won't go on too many tangents.
I think that's a good start.
Cool.
So let's get right into it. Since we are at a university, I'm going to be slightly academic for the first and only time in this talk, and just talk about what is emotional intelligence. It's a buzzword. Everybody kind of knows these days what it is, but just to recap so that we get our bearings. Emotional intelligence is defined as the ability to identify and control your the thoughts and emotions of yourself, of other people, and of groups. So that includes things like empathy. That includes self-awareness, that includes motivation.
Socially aware, pathological optimism, positivity.
So the way that Colin and I incorporate that's the way that we kind of turn it on its academic side, but the way that Colin and I look at it is really in that bubble of the antithesis of a typical salesperson. So what is it that a good salesperson does that makes them good? A good salesperson has access to the same books and training and seminars that every other salesperson does. But what's the difference between that good salesperson and the great salesperson, this elevated salesperson who's doing things, has access to all the same stuff that they do, but is doing it in a unique and exciting and, as I like to say, elevated way?
Yeah, and this person is so good that you probably have never met them before because you didn't know you were being sold. So, in all honesty, when we're talking about this, if the hands in the room said that you guys consider yourselves salespeople, I'm going to assume there are people in the audience that think these guys don't know shit, and I'm a way better salesperson than they are. And I want you to know that that's okay, okay? Just take everything that we're saying as additional value, because a great salesperson versus a good salesperson is the difference between being sold and purchasing, right? So the difference between a great salesperson or a good salesperson and an elevated salesperson is that you didn't realize that you got sold. You were just always on a purchasing mission, and this person let you buy. And last but not least, if you're ever in a situation where you had a great idea and then you spent money, chances are you were sold by a great salesperson who let you think it was your idea. So we're going to go over all of that.
Yeah, we're going to spend a lot of time. Our hope is we're going to go a little bit off our normal script because we only have an hour, and Colin likes to talk a lot,
Yes.
as you will see. We're going to try to boil this
the
down
slides?
into some really good nuggets, a lot of tactical stuff that those of you who are selling can go back to the office after this and actually start using. But to start, let's start with a little bit of the mental side, because selling is a mental game, a mental sport, as much as it is a tactical sport.
Yeah, and just to prelude this, I guess I would say, when we're talking about sales, all of you that did not raise your hands are in sales. Like I promise you, if you're married, you're in sales. If you have kids, you're definitely in sales. And the list goes on. So when we're talking about like achieving any goals outside of the typical sales capacity, just try to frame it in the context of, was I actually selling or was I being sold? But try not to frame it or limit yourself just in the context of I'm a salesperson, because that's what we would like to get across to the room that's not directly involved in sales. So this is a slide that we typically don't spend a lot of time on because we're talking to people that consider themselves advanced salespeople, and advanced salespeople always have goals. They're like goal-driven, right? So a great salesperson has goals. An elevated salesperson has a purpose. And that's kind of where we start, right? I'm assuming you guys all have goals. I'm hoping you've even heard this Fugazi Harvard study. Have you guys heard this Harvard goal study? All right, then it's worth me saying it really quick.
Go for it.
Okay, so it's like 30 years ago, they surveyed the incoming class of a Harvard MBA school, or a Harvard MBA class, and they asked them all, how many of you guys have goals? How many of you guys have written down goals? And they surveyed them, and out of the entire class, 80% of them said that they just didn't have goals, or they had goals, but they weren't really defined. 15% of them said that they did have goals and they were defined. And then 5% of them said that they had goals, they were defined, and they wrote them down. None of you guys have heard this before? All right, this is great. Okay. So then they surveyed this entire class 30 years later. The 15% of the group that did have goals but did not write them down, on average, was making double, or were making double than the 80% that didn't have defined goals. The 5%ers that had goals, defined, and wrote them down were making 10 times what the 15%ers were making. So there's a bunch of logic behind it. If you guys don't have goals, you might be in the wrong room, right? Like in all honesty, there's books on that and there's courses on that, and that's great. But when it comes to sales, goals don't really mean anything without purpose. And that's what this slide is about, is if your goal is to get in contact with an investor or a prospect or a customer, and you've spent 100 dials, right, and it's now 9 p.m. on a Friday night, if your goal was 100 dials, then you got it. But if your purpose was to impact and help and motivate, this customer into whatever context that your product is going to help them with, that's a purpose. And that purpose will drive you way past 9 p.m. on a Friday night.
So this goes back to that difference between the good salesperson. The good salesperson has goals. He might have even written down those goals.
Right.
But this elevated salesperson is working more with a purpose. So
This is not a tangent, I promise.
it already is a tangent.
It is already a tangent.
Just by you saying
When
that.
when I was in college, all I wanted was a fresh pair of Air Force Ones. Do you guys know what those are? Like that white, crisp Nike tennis shoe. And like back in the day, when the Jay-Z's and the Fat Joes and the Nellies of the world were rapping about this shoe, it was really important to never wear the same shoe twice. You couldn't have a crease in it. That just showed that you just weren't a baller, okay? I wanted to be a baller. So I did that, and I accomplished it. I was buying a fresh pair of white Air Force Ones every week, and that was the goal. So I achieved the goal. And then I wanted a nice car. That was a goal, right? And then I wanted a house in the hills. And then I wanted to own a house. And then I wanted like a better job. And then I wanted to be the entrepreneur. And like if you can see this pattern of goals, and now let's fast forward to the person that has everything, like Bill Gates. Well, he still has goals now. They just have nothing to do with money, right? Like he wants to cure famine and AIDS and malaria. Yeah. And the point is that these goals are this revolving door. And they're awesome, and they're great, and they keep you motivated. But you don't stop when you achieve your goal. The purpose is why you watch the movie, right? Like you're not going to pay to go see the movie if the goal was for the guy to get the girl or the girl to get the guy. You'll pay to go see the movie because the purpose behind this person wanting to achieve their goal is what is compelling and valuable. So that's what we're talking about, and there's nothing more important for purpose as it pertains to sales than what we're about to show you guys right now.
Yeah, so normally when we're working with students or with companies that we consult for, we'll go through this purpose statement exercise. We don't have a ton of time here today. I want to get to all those golden nuggets that I was talking about before, but there are a lot of different ways to get to a purpose statement. A quick and easy way that we like to do it is the following. So we would have people list 2 of their unique personal qualities.
You guys know, do you guys have purpose statements, or have you done this exercise before? All right. So normally we would engage you and we'd have you do it, but we don't have time. So this, if you take any notes in this class, this is one note.
He's going to say that 12 more times.
That I recommend you, take back and work on, because it's a game changer. And if you're as passionate about anything as we are about sales, this purpose statement is very much applicable. So the first thing that you do is you list 2 unique personal qualities of yours, like optimism and perseverance, energetic, charisma, whatever it may be. Second, you got to name 1 or 2 ways that you enjoy expressing those qualities. So I enjoy expressing my optimism, or I enjoy expressing my charisma, or I enjoy expressing whatever it is through these qualities. Right? If it's inspiring people, if it's teaching people, if it's training people, whatever it may be.
Look at all these number 1s. Sweet.
Who did these slides?
Who did these
Fire
slides?
him. No, I'm just...
It was a Google conversion issue.
Sure. Okay, so assume you are in a perfect sales scenario. And remember, this is sales as it relates to you, not as it relates to us. What does the perfect world look like? Like for me, my clients or my partner or my customer is hanging off of every word that I'm saying because they believe me and they trust me, and this is a cohesive unit that we're forming, and they love me and they're asking me about my family and they know my kid's name, and together, like, we are on a journey, right? Like that's a perfect sale. If that happens to any of you guys, you have a deal, right? So for me, that's a perfect sales situation for me and my client. The last is just combine them all together. So you want to combine these together and combine them in first person, right? So you didn't do it, did you?
Oh, I did it.
Okay. So Garrett.
I told you it was a lot of words.
Garrett likes to surprise all of you guys, including me sometimes. This is my purpose statement, okay? So it's wordy, but it's important because it at least will give you an example of what the actual foundation is, right? So what you do is you go, my purpose is to, and then you fill in number 1. So my purpose is to use my passion and optimism to, and that's number 2, right? How do you enjoy leveraging it? To inspire people to be engaged and vulnerable and eager to conquer their goals. And then what is my perfect situation? They're jumping out of their seats with excitement, just like all of you guys right now. to leverage what they've learned and look at the world in an entirely different way. That's my purpose statement.
And this is a sales-focused purpose statement. You could have a different purpose statement for your job overall, if it's not sales, for your family, for your life. Obviously, this is a sales-focused talk, so we're focused on the sales purpose statement. But know that it's okay to, I have more than one purpose statement depending on the subject that we're talking about. And this is just a very wordy example of a sales purpose statement.
In all sincerity, if you don't have a purpose statement, the chances of you being the beast that you envision yourself being is just not as likely. Like, we take sales very seriously, so much so that we work on the inner game just as much as we work on the external game. And like, when I have to stay with my team and do an Australian blitz on Thursday at midnight because it's 12 p.m. there, like, better believe my entire team has a united purpose, and we're fighting for each other, not just for whatever my paycheck's going to be based on my commission. So just, that's what I mean by taking this as seriously as possible.
So that's one reason why purpose matters for selling. Another reason, and those of you in sales will know that this is true, is that sales is a tough profession. You're getting kicked in the stomach constantly. You're getting no's, you're getting objections, you're getting issues with customers. More often than not, people are telling you no, they're hanging up on you when you're calling them. And if you don't have a purpose that's driving you to achieve that next step in your career, that whatever it is that's driving you and getting you up in the morning, it can be a very long and lonely, painful day. But having a purpose and having something that you're like, okay, I got hung up on this time, but the next one's going to pick up and I'm going to help them with XYZ is super meaningful and super powerful.
Sales is not for the faint of heart, right? Is that how you say that, right? Mm-hmm. Faint of heart? Mm-hmm. It's tough. I mean, the analogy that Garrett hates that I use because it's cheesy is baseball. Like, if you don't hit the ball 7 out of 10 times, you're in the Hall of Fame. Like, if you hit the ball 3 out of 10 times, if you have a batting average of 300, like, you're Mark McGwire. Like, you're amazing. But that means that you've gotten beat up 7 times. And if you don't have the perseverance or the resilience to take the no and run with it and be able to have gratitude for the no and learn from the no, then you won't survive. And there's no way that you're going to be able to enjoy the no if you don't have a purpose driving you behind it. So we're going to talk a lot about embracing the no and celebrating the process, but it all starts with something that's going to keep you going every single day.
It's so funny that you mentioned a cheesy analogy.
I haven't seen these slides. You're doing this, aren't you? Okay.
Because it's about to get cheesier, and then I'll rein him in.
So let's just frame this up. I'm not cheesy. However, if we were going to personify logic and emotion, I'd be on the emotional side.
I would be the logic side.
You'd be on the logical side. So this is my favorite slide, which is why he gave you guys the cheese factor. You will never, ever, ever sell someone that you hate. Like, I just promise you, it won't happen. Like, at the time of the transaction, you're not going to say, I can't stand that dude that just paid my mortgage payment. Like, I hate that person that just got my future fiance her ring. Like, those things don't happen. So you might as well proactively figure out a way to fall in love with these people before you meet them. Fall in love every single time. When I was single, I would fall in love. He did not know me when I was single. I don't know why I gave him that look. When I was single, I would try to fall in love every weekend, right? Like, that was just my thing, and it was real. It was real love. I want to fall in love every weekend. I've been married for 4 years. I have a kid. I mean, I'm really happy because that worked, and I didn't want to do that anymore. But the point is, fall in love with every client. Fall in love with every no. Fall in love with great conversations. Fall in love with great objections. Fall in love every single time so that by the time that they buy, you already love them, and the sale is just a byproduct of the love. It's not cheesy, it's real. You will never hate these people if they purchase from you. Figure out a way to like them immediately.
So there's a really good real-life example of Colin falling in love and using this in a sales context. So we are working with a company, and they're a fast-growing company up in Venice. They have never done any sort of outbound selling or cold calling before. So we went up there, this was just this Monday, we went up there, trained up their team on how to cold call, gave them a really exciting script that we like to use, and got them super fired up about cold calling, which is a tough thing to get fired up about.
Yeah.
At the end of the training, the sales manager wisely looks Colin right in the eye and goes, "Can you do that right now?" Colin goes, yeah, sure. So we started looking up, we went on LinkedIn and started looking up potential prospects to look up their number and call into, just so that Colin could show them exactly how it would work in the real world.
I show them what a beast looks like.
We found,
just to be clear.
We found she was like the perfect head of marketing at Red Bull. It was a local company. He was ready. We got the phone number.
Target demographic.
Perfect target demographic. And everybody's looking at Colin waiting. And Colin just kind of in his zone looks up and goes, I already love this person. He was so excited to call this woman. And the call went well.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
so
we had a guy one time on our sales force who I think the prospect that he was calling at a meeting set was like from like the University of Western Iowa, but it was in Mississippi. It was really weird, just some like weird school. And the guy was a CTO and like just wasn't really nice on the first call. And he looked at me and he goes, I do not like this guy. I'm just telling you right now, like there's nothing about me. Like we don't vibe out. Like I don't love him. Like I'm telling you right now, like I'm not the right guy for this meeting. And I said, well, let's dig in a little bit. Like what's this school all about? And he goes, exactly. Look at this school. Who goes to a school like this? And I go, well, did you look up alumni from the school? And this dude is like the biggest Johnny Cash fan ever. And like lo and behold, Johnny Cash went to the school. And he's like, oh shit, Johnny Cash went to the school. Calls the guy. First thing is, do you guys know that Johnny Cash is like one of your most famous alumni? And they had a 30-minute conversation about Cash. Point being, fall in love. Figure it out before, not during, not after. Hey.
all right, so now we're going to get into some of the nuggets.
Yeah.
Starting with some mindset type of revelation.
Can I just say something?
Yes, you can.
Cold calling. Show of hands. How many people enjoy cold calling? Really? Hired. All right. 2.
What's the first thing you said when you called the Red Bull?
Oh, that's a whole other seminar.
Yeah.
That's a whole other seminar.
Few words that came out.
She didn't pick up. But I know what you're getting at, and I got that heat for you. Trust me.
Yeah,
So let me just get back to this cold calling thing, because like 1 out of 230 people raise their hand, and normally I would say if you meet someone who says that they love cold calling, to run the other way. But you seem really kind, and I would never say that. But what I would say is if you meet someone and you ask them, do they enjoy cold calling, and they go, well, I enjoy sales, and I don't know what sales is without cold calling, that's the person that you hire, because that's the person that'll be your boss soon. Like, we've done experiments where we had cold callers, these are called SDRs, sales development reps, that were calling to book appointments for our closers, right? And one day, we just did an experiment. And we said, okay, everyone's a closer today. Who do you think got more sales that day? The SDRs. Because the closers just knew how to close. After 6 months of cold calling, like opening was the hard part, and they figured that out. Closing is not nearly as hard as opening. So like, cold calling is not dead. Cold prospecting is the only way that you become like $1 million salesperson in software. And I'm sure in real estate and in everything else, it goes for the same, it's on the same token. But I just want to make sure that we just touch on cold calling. If you don't already have that skill set, that's another seminar.
Perfect. All right, so we're going to get into some of this stuff. I'm going to let Colin continue to run with some of it, but I want to put it into context a little bit. If you go back to what we were talking about the good salesperson and what he or she does versus what this elevated salesperson does, this person with the high EQ, with the just deeper understanding, the sales ninja, as Colin sometimes likes to call them.
Yes.
So here are just a few things, and now it's nugget time. We're just going to start firing stuff at you, and hopefully this stuff starts to resonate.
We're doing good on time.
We are good on time.
Okay.
So you
All
can
right.
rattle a little bit.
Okay. Not too much, Jerry. I won't rattle too much. So I want to be real with you. I hated sales graduating college. Like, it was not the profession that I wanted to be part of. In fact, I had like this strong disdain for the profession. Like, I just think it's got, like, I was one of those people that had that stigma attached to it. Like, it was the cheesy car salesman, and I wanted nothing to do with it. I went to UC Santa Barbara. I thought that I was bigger and better than these non-college grads that were making good money, but like, what were they selling? It didn't matter, right? And then obviously I got a job in sales because it paid more than every other job that I was looking at fresh out of college, and I figured I'd do it until I found a real job. And I hated it so much that one day my boss was like, listen, like you got to figure this out on your own. Like you're in the wrong place if you hate this, but you have a great personality and people like you when you show up as the person that you're not right now, which is someone that like thinks that they're too good for sales. It just like creeped me out a little bit. To even be labeled as a salesman, like was really hard for me to swallow. And so after reading and doing research on the inner game, we found these things called opposite actionable statements. And so what they are is it's a great way for you to hack your inner game so that you show up in the right way and you do your job and you beast every single time, even though the odds are stacked against you. So like, for instance, I had a challenge with calling a CEO because I was a 21-year-old punk kid in West Hollywood, California. And that's exactly what I thought that they were going to view me as. The opposite actionable statement to that is every CEO was a punk kid that just graduated college at some point. And that worked for me. Like it worked for me so much that I showed up with way more confidence I ever would have had. And CEOs started telling me that I reminded them of them when they were punk kids fresh out of college. Another big one for me was money. Like I felt so cheesy if I brought up money. But I was really good at selling myself on products, right? Like you can't sell anything you don't believe in. So like I would spend a lot of time selling myself on why what I was selling to other people made a ton of sense and it was gonna add value and not take value away. But I still had a really hard time asking for money. So the opposite action statement was if they bring up money before I do, I'm going to look like a cheesy car salesman sales executive, which was the antithesis of what I wanted to be. So that really worked out well. I was bringing up money before they even had a chance to even think about it, but it wasn't cheesy. And that's the thing about emotional intelligence, is if you think you sound cheesy, then you should be self-aware to know that you actually sound cheesy, right? Like that's what some of those pillars are that we're talking about. Another one for money was just bringing up money in general was just made me feel skeezy in a way. And so the opposite actionable statement was, I can't help these people. Remember, I had sold myself that my product was going to help them. I can't help these people if I don't help them purchase. And I can't help them purchase if I don't bring up money. Anyways, opposite actionable statements are huge. Be real with yourself. Look in the mirror. All of us have them. Figure out your own opposite actionable statements and show up like a beast. Abundance versus scarcity, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. So I think the best way to explain this is the story of...
Yeah, there's a good story about this. So
Don't say his name.
I will try not to say his name.
No.
We had a salesperson who worked for us, and he was our best salesperson by quite a bit.
He was so good.
Incredible salesperson.
And when we say sales, full cycle sales.
Full sales cycle.
So he was good at finding it and closing
That's
it.
right. We had another salesperson on the team, and she was a great salesperson as well, but she was not nearly in this other person's league.
I wouldn't have called her great.
Good. That's a good point.
Yeah.
This is the exact illustration of the good versus elevated that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So one day, she was reporting directly to Colin. She comes in to Colin for a one-on-one, and she says, you know, this is not really working out. We don't have territories right now. Everybody's calling everybody else, and this other salesperson who's doing really well is calling all over the place and is claiming all the different the different leads and prospects out there, and there's not enough good prospects for the rest of us to call.
He was just swarming San Francisco. And like, if you're calling San Francisco and you're selling tech, like that's where you want to be calling into. And this dude like woke up early and just stayed late at night. And he just called and called and called to the point where she came in and said, he's taking up all the leads. There's no more leads in the best territory, which is San Francisco.
So Colin wants to learn a little bit more about what's going on, get to the bottom of it, make sure everything's okay. Calls this gentleman into his office to see what's going on. He sits down on the couch, and before they even get started, he's sitting on the couch and goes, this is a pretty comfortable couch. Wonder who makes this couch. Pulls up the cushion, looks at the name of the company, finds the company. It's somewhere in the Midwest or Montana or something like that. He goes, okay, I can call Montana. I bet you they have at least a few hundred thousand people that are, a few hundred or thousand people that are making these and that are using computers and that might need the software that we're selling. Went, had the meeting with Colin, but went back to his computer. Actually, no, he pulled up the computer in the meeting.
Before
he pulled up the computer in the meeting. He said, hold on
one
second.
LinkedIn.
Went up on LinkedIn, and that's how he got the information about where the company was and how many people they had. And he fired off a LinkedIn message to the CEO of the company and said, I'm so-and-so, and this is what we're selling. Got a meeting with that person.
In not Montana. Where was it? Damn it.
I feel like it was Montana or Idaho or something. Somewhere random.
In somewhere random.
Didn't matter.
Somewhere, think about that for a second. There's a woman who's complaining to me that there's not enough leads, and then the dude who's crushing it because all he's doing is calling, because all he sees is leads, sits down, and before I can even ask him why he's bogarting all these leads, he looks at this couch and goes, "This is a nice couch." Okay, who makes this couch? That's abundance. There is so much opportunity out there, unless you don't know how to cold prospect. Like if you're waiting for leads to come to you, like good luck. And you'll probably be really good. I mean, you'll have your ceiling. But like when you're a beast, like the whole world, like who calls into the Midwest to sell software? Especially without territories. No one. They're calling New York, Chicago, LA. But this guy sees love and abundance everywhere. So anyways, that's the whole point. Scarcity versus abundance. That was a tangent. My apologies.
No,
celebrate the process. You guys, if there's one, okay, you were right.
I know.
If there's another note that you take, there's another note that you guys take from this, it's celebrate the process. Celebrate the process is predicated on gratitude, but what this really means is celebrate the no. Celebrate a good conversation, celebrate a bad conversation, celebrate a new email campaign, celebrate a cold call, celebrate the process so much that the sale isn't actually worthy of a celebration. It's just a byproduct of the process. Like people, and when I say it's predicated on gratitude, it's this tool belt. Can I talk about tool belt?
Yeah, sure.
It's this tool belt analogy that we use where, like, I pray for you all to get as many no's as you possibly can. You're just not allowed to get the same no twice. Does that make sense? So how do you fix that? Like, how do you love no's but never get the same no twice? You put your big ass ego aside and you ask someone what I could have done differently. And then you take that tool, you put it in your tool belt, and you hope that you get the same objection the next day. And by the end of 1,000 no's, you've got 1,000 tools and you're a beast. So celebrate the process so much so that the wins are just a byproduct of it. Because, like we said earlier, as it relates to baseball, you're going to have a really lonely life. It's going to be sad and hard and difficult in sales if all you do is celebrate your yeses. I mean, how many, in enterprise sales where you make the most money, you could get a sale once a quarter, but you might get 2 milli for it, right? I mean, even in transactional software sales, if you get a sale a week, you're killing it, but that still means that you have 4 out of 5 days that suck. Every day needs to be celebration. Every single day you need to find the good, you need to put the ego aside, get the tool belt as chunky as can be. And then the 4-minute mile, I think this is, does everyone know about the 4-minute mile? Do you know the guy's name?
Roger Bannister.
Ooh. You want to say it?
Sure.
Okay.
So there was a point, I couldn't tell you the exact year, maybe somebody in here knows, where no runners could break that 4-minute mile barrier. It was thought to be impossible. We just can't do it. People were running in the 4 zeros, 4:08, 4:10.
Couldn't run a mile under 4 minutes.
Could not run a mile under 4 minutes.
Physically impossible is what they said. The human body just can't do it.
Then Roger Bannister, I believe he was a British guy,
He was?
knocks it out, runs a sub 4-minute mile.
In the Olympics.
The next Olympics, how many people broke the 4-minute mile? Every single competitor in the next Olympics broke the 4-minute mile. It was, I mean, you could argue performance-enhancing drugs, whatever, change in diet, but we would argue that it's a complete mindset change.
Yes.
So
Or shift.
a mindset shift.
Mindset shift.
So this happens in sales too. This happens all the time.
Yeah.
You've got a growing company. You've got a young sales team that hasn't really closed a lot of deals yet. Maybe you're still finding product market fit. Your biggest customer has paid you $5,000 for the year. That's the big goal. Then one sales guy all of a sudden gets a $15,000 deal. And everybody all of a sudden will start getting $15,000 deals because the excuses are gone, the mental block. It really goes back to the opposite actionable statements and changing the way that you're thinking about things. And so if there are any sales managers in the room especially, but even salespeople.
CEOs especially.
Getting the sales team's psyche to understand and appreciate that bigger numbers are possible is massive in terms of a mindset thing. And I think it's worth telling your story about your first job.
About being lied to?
Yes.
Okay. My first job out of college, my boss told me, come into sales. By the way, like I had an internship at a public relations firm, Davies, the biggest PR firm in the Central Coast, which means it was the smallest PR firm anywhere else. But I dug it because I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I sure as heck knew it wasn't sales. And anyways, this guy, he's like driving a Lexus, he's got a Rolex, and he's like a friend of a friend of a friend. He's like, just come, just do sales until you find your real job. If you do what I tell you, you'll make $100,000. And I'm 21. I'm trying to find a job that pays $30,000 and I'm stoked on it. So I do exactly what he says. After the first 2 months. The first 2 months were horrible. I hated it. I told you guys that. And then I read a book that changed my life. And then I just accidentally started setting records. And I was killing it. But I did what he asked me to do because I believed him. He took me in front of everybody 6 months later because I did it in 6 months. I made $100K in 6 months, not in a year. In 22, I mean, you want to talk about fresh Air Force Ones at this point. and he brings me in front of everyone. He goes, give Colin a round of applause for being the first salesperson to ever break 100,000. So I pull him aside. I'm like, you lied to me. Like, all you did was reaffirm everything I hated about salespeople in general, right? Like, you told me if I did what you told me, I'd make $100,000, and then I just heard that no one else did it. And he goes, you're right. The problem is I didn't lie to you. You're just the only one that believed me. Yes, ma'am.
What is the book you've read?
Ooh.
You're waiting for.
I'm waiting for that.
He's embarrassed to tell you. I know what it is.
All right, so look, just remember, okay? The sales shift is all about showing up as the antithesis of your typical salesperson, right? And so when my typical sales manager gave me a book to read, the cover alone made me throw up in my mouth. But I would rather do anything than sell at that point. So I just chilled back and I read this book.
Just tell him what the book is so we can get to the good stuff.
It was Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant. I took the cover off. I've probably read the book like 9 times. You'll never hear me say the word problem. You'll always hear me say the word challenge. Just as an example of, saying, you guys, your own vices are your own vices. Mine happens to be Tony. Just is what it is. Did you tell her to ask that?
I didn't, no.
Okay. All right. Don't judge me.
So that's about all we have time for in terms of the difference between the good salesperson and how they mentally approach things versus this elevated salesperson and how they approach things. The next batch of conversations that we'll have are
McDonald's moments.
Are around nuggets?
Nuggets.
Yeah, I got it. We'll leave that one out next time.
That did not land. You guys didn't get that? McDonald's moments? Dropping nuggets? Okay.
Talk about the way that they plan.
They just got it.
Right.
It's fine.
All right, go ahead. Go recover.
All right. So we talk a lot about EQ. And by the way, like I'm saddened that emotional intelligence is such a buzzword in the sales arena right now because Garrett and I were talking about this years ago, but people caught on really quick. And so now, like, everybody's talking about the psychology of the sales and the inner game. And all they're really doing is, like, teaching you how to manipulate people. And that's, like, the opposite. That is the prototypical salesperson. Now you just have a different tool. Like, so A, you're selling, you're not letting people purchase. I know, I digress. So I just, as we talk about emotional intelligence and EQ and how EQ is directly correlated to a higher sales IQ, just understand that not all definitions are the same underneath emotional intelligence and EQ. So this was a big one for us. It's just what it says, right? Focus on the goal. Focus on like what you want as opposed to like how like you're going to get there. And so the sentence is focus on where you want to be before worrying about how you want to get there. I ask a salesperson like, hey, well, how much do you want to make this year? And they tell me $350,000. I go, okay, cool. How many deals do you need to sell every month? I need to sell 787 transactional deals, right? Okay, cool. So can you break that down to me, like by week, by day, by month? And they can do it all. And the only challenge is that they want to make $300,000, like $350,000. Like that was their goal. So in my opinion, they don't actually even know what they want yet. They just had an arbitrary number, and they're going to focus so much on the means that by day 3, if they haven't sold a deal and a half, then they're screwed, right? So what we like to say is focus on the what, like real strong. Focus on the what every time that you access that inner game dialogue of yours. Focus on the what when you're having conversations with yourself, because they are the most important conversations you will have in any sales conversation, is the one that you have with yourself, not with your customer. And a really good example of this is Barbara Walters.
So when we teach this to undergraduates at universities, and we go, do you guys know who Barbara Walters is? They tell us no. So,
so we assume
so
you
if
guys
anybody
don't.
knows like who the hot YouTube interviewer is that does the same thing that Colin's about to tell you about, please let us know, because there's not a lot of shelf life left on our Barbara Walters analogy.
So you guys know who Barbara Walters is.
But this crowd knows who Barbara Walters is. I can just feel it. They're more educated
right.
than
They're more
the rest
educated.
of the folks that we.
He made that your idea. You see how he did that? That's an elevated salesperson. Okay. So what's Barbara Walters known for? Making the people she's interviewed cry. Making senators happy. And making people cry. But yes, making people cry all the time. Everyone from Obama to Will Smith to George Clooney and Bill Clinton, just to name a few. So much so that she's known for this that people have conversations, like publicly, about it's not gonna work on them. Like there's no way Barbara Walters is gonna make me cry. Will Smith is my favorite, because like he was serious. Like, I got this. I know she's gonna bring up my dad. I know she's gonna bring up my kids. Like it's not going to work. And obviously he cried. And so Barbara Walters did an interview, and they said, how do you do it? And she said, I write down a bunch of questions. Like I could write questions for hours. And then I throw some away. I write new ones, and I, wait for it, reorder them. And that, if you're not an elevated salesperson, will just fly right past you. Because a great salesperson asks really good questions. And then they get really good answers, and then they work the system to try to attach those golden nuggets to value props. An elevated salesperson asks really good questions, not so that they hear the answer, but so the person giving the answer hears the answer. It's a totally different question. Like, the only thing we can leverage in sales is the finish line. Barbara Walters knows where the finish line is. So like, it wasn't that Will Smith wasn't prepared for the question. He wasn't prepared for the order of the question. It was this emotional roller coaster, and then at some point it snuck up on him, and in the interview he goes, damn, you got me. Ask questions so that they hear the answers to their questions. You don't technically even need to know the answers to their questions, because you know where the finish line is. So if you can order your questions in the appropriate way, it's less about your question bank and more about the roadmap to the sale. And that's like sales 101, everybody messes it up. I'll talk to a great salesperson, like, tell me about the questions that you ask. It's just 100 question bank. Well, what's the order? It depends, it's different for each person. Maybe you hit your goal this month, maybe.
The one thing you forgot to say is that if you write down one thing from this presentation, this is the one to do it. This is really, Colin mentions it in kind of a casual way, but this is really profound, and great elevated salespeople really do understand this, because they already know, hopefully, if they've done this enough times and they've rearranged their questions and they've stocked up their tool belt and hit the roadblocks along the way so that they know what the answers are going to be and what the outcomes of those answers are going to be, they're going to be able to really guide the conversation by letting people hear themselves answer, whether it's because an emotion is created or because they realize something that they hadn't thought of before, or they say something that leads right into what your product or service can help them with. There's a million different ways that them hearing themselves answer a question can help get you to your finish line.
Let's do a real life example.
Okay.
Haley, where's Haley? Is Haley here? Haley set this whole thing up. Is Haley in the room?
She left.
Damn. Who in the room runs this facility? Is there someone in the room that works here? Anyone in the room that works at this? Someone works here.
Colin's off book.
What's that person's name? Just ask her. She's on the phone. All right, so let's just pretend that Haley, and Haley's sitting in that chair right now. Haley, her job was to make sure that this room was filled, right? Or full. She did social media, she did marketing, and she connected some of you guys, and she was talking to us all the time. And if I was selling Haley on a product to help ensure that she could fill crowds, one question that I don't actually care about the answer for, but like this is an example of what we're talking about, would be, Haley, who gets fired if this room doesn't get full? Hopefully it's her. I mean, obviously not like in reality, but like hopefully like I'm talking to the right person. But no matter who I'm talking to, that's that moment, right? Where it's like, oh wow, like I could actually get fired if I don't do my job, and this person is trying to sell me something to help me do my job better. So there's like a list of 100 impactful questions that we have, and it's not a tease.
There's actually a few of them
Oh, perfect.
on the next slide, but
Nice.
an important thing as well,
God, you're good.
not just ones where you kind of know what the answer might be, but also questions that your prospect can't answer immediately.
Yeah.
That's going to make them stop and think and really be introspective about whatever it is that you're there to help them with. We're not going to read through all of these questions, and like Colin said, we have...
Can we just talk about one?
You can
that's
talk
not
about,
up there.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're getting at.
Okay.
We'll get there for sure.
Okay,
But
okay.
there are hundreds of these, and hopefully, if you're a high EQ salesperson, you're coming up with them as you go along as well. But it's really important to create that emotional and intellectual connection that comes with them having to really think about what it is that you're asking them.
And maybe just
Give
one.
them the- give
Two,
them the-
I am, but just one with the metrics one, right?
Okay.
Like, you know people are tracking analytics like crazy in 2018, right? Like, especially if I'm calling a CTO, he's got KPIs, he's got data, he's got OKRs. If I say, hey, I know that you're tracking a bunch of metrics, but can you just tell me like which 2 are you tracking religiously? He doesn't know because he's not tracking 2 religiously. He's tracking 200 religiously, but he should be tracking 2 religiously. So he's going to give me some sort of like answer, but normally it sounds like this. That's a really good question. I guess if I had to say, the point is all of a sudden you're adding value on accident, right? Kind of like how my shirt's accidentally untucked in the back. That didn't land either. All right, it's all good. So what Garrett wanted to talk about was objections. We don't have time to talk about overcoming objections, and this isn't a tease for a future seminar, but we could talk hours about overcoming objections. But here's a really good example of this. It's called a discovery confirmation. So you got your question bank, you've got your list, and you got your order, you got your Barbara Walters, you know where the finish line is, and now you're done, right? And you ask a question like, okay, so it sounds like this is how the product would function in a perfect world, and as long as it did this, this, and this, that's exactly what you were hoping that it would do in the first place. And you're looking for us to manage the service in this way, and this is just your perfect ideal situation. Does that sound about right? Yes, Colin, thank you. You asked great questions, and you took good notes. Awesome. Okay, with that being said, is there any reason outside of money that you wouldn't want to purchase this if it was exactly what you just told me you wanted it to be?
And that's a really subtle question, but it's a really impactful question.
Well, what do you think they're thinking, right? Like the finish line, you guys, they think the finish line is, I'm hoping they're going to say no. If it does everything that I want it to do, there is no reason I wouldn't purchase. But that's BS. There's always a reason they're not going to purchase. So what I'm trying to actually do is leverage the finish line by what they're going to give me, which is the real reason they're not going to buy. Which is, of course, I'm not just going to buy even if it's a perfect situation, because budget doesn't open up until 2 months from now, because I have a tester, because I have a recommender, because I have to run this up the flagpole, because we have a committee, because I'm checking out other competition. I mean, a good salesperson tries to avoid objections and do a really good job at selling. An elevated salesperson, a great salesperson, does the exact opposite. Give me all of your puke up front, please. Give it all to me so that I have more time to navigate the objections.
Yep. And the reason that he's saying outside of budget is because everybody's going to try to push you on price. Let's get that one off the table so that they don't say, oh, well, if it costs a lot, and then they stop. We found that if you get the budget one aside, that's when you really start to get into the true nitty-gritty of objections.
And if you took down one note today, it would be the discovery confirmation. This is great.
Do we have time to? Oh, we don't have
12
time.
minutes.
Yeah,
We got this. No?
no, we don't have time to do examples.
Okay.
But
All
if you
right.
could only make 3 statements about your product or your company to your prospect, what would those statements be?
Like, actually ask yourself this question. If you could only make 3 statements to sell us, like that's all you had was 3 statements to sell your product or your service, what would those 3 statements be? And just hold them inside of your head. Okay. You said we didn't have time?
I don't think we have time.
Okay.
So normally we would ask for a few, and you guys would all be wrong.
Because we know where the finish line is.
Because we know where the finish line is. What most people will say when you ask them this question is they'll go through their value proposition. They'll go through something about their product, the problem that it tries to solve. Important, interesting stuff. But the elevated salesperson is going to do it a lot differently than that because they know that in this day and age, their prospect has already looked them up on their website, on LinkedIn, everywhere else. And so all that stuff that they think they're supposed to say to answer this question, their customer probably already knows it just from looking at the website. So what gets really important for these 3 statements and having them in your pocket when you do get lucky enough to have a conversation with the prospect is to sell emotion, not the features.
And that's because every buyer is 50% down the buying line before they even talk to you because they have the internet. So all of you guys probably had 3 statements, and I could have found some sort of those 3 statements on your website if you had one. Right? Like whatever your 3 statements were that you had in your head, even though you're going to tell me that you didn't, chances are I could find some rendition of what that looks like on your website.
So an example might be if you're selling security software and you want to say that our software will prevent you from getting hacked. A better example of selling emotion and having a real statement is one of our best customers had an ex-employee who retained access to XYZ and was able to hack into their CRM and other really important customer data for 2 years after they were employed with our company because they didn't protect with whatever the product is.
Right.
So there's an emotional element to it. You're essentially telling them the same thing, but you're really tying that in with stories, with...
And that's elevated. I mean, what he just did was elevated. You could just take it, you could dumb it down. You could just put an emotional wrapper around it. If they tell you what's something that's really important out of the discovery that you got from them, a golden nugget was, it's really important that this is a end-to-end comprehensive security solution. A way to emotionally wrap that so that it's not on your website and it's one of your 3 statements is our best customers come to us with one concern and one concern only. And that is to have an end-to-end solution that is comprehensive to manage our entire suite of applications. And then what do you think the person on the other end of the line is doing? They're subconsciously placing themselves in this template of what one of their best, most successful customers look like, right? Another one would be, it's really important for me to have a dedicated resource, right? Like that's what's really important as part of the sales process. And then the emotional wrapper for that would be, the reason why we do what we do is so that you don't have to manage your protection on your own. And because of that, we have a dedicated resource for every single person that signs up with the company. It's exactly what you guys wrote down as your statement. You're just wrapping it in something that's more emotional so that you can justify emotion with logic. There will never be a purchase that you make that isn't either justified by logic or emotion or vice versa. So you might as well just get into it, love it, fall in love with it.
So we got to get to the good stuff.
Let's do it.
The stuff that you guys can take home and use today.
McDonald's
when you go
moments.
back to work. The nuggets. The nuggets.
Still didn't land.
No, it's never going to land. I told you it wouldn't.
Okay.
All right. So
for the record, he did tell me. We did talk about it. Celebrate the process.
Again.
If there was one thing that you guys take away from today, celebrate the process. It will change your sales game forever. If you just celebrate the wins, it will be a long and lonely road. Mirror versus window. When you win, and you will win, okay, look out the window. Look at everybody else in the company and say, we did this. Engineering, you helped out. HR, you helped out. Everybody, this is a collective win. And when you fail, and you will fail, because if you sell 3 out of 10, you're an all-star, so 7 people will still say no to you, look in the mirror. There's a difference between accountability that lies within a salesperson and outside of a salesperson. You know, like someone at my company, we were talking about investing. This is an old company. We were talking about getting investors, and this person who was not in sales, who was tasked with rallying investors, said there were just market trends that were outside of our control. We didn't know this was happening. We didn't know that they were going to respond like this, et cetera, et cetera. And in my head, I'm thinking, God, if you were on my team, you'd be fired. And that's just because a salesperson can't do that. Like a salesperson can't say, oh yeah, the reason why this person didn't sell was because the product was bad. The reason why this person didn't sell was because market trends changed, and so now they couldn't afford it anymore. No one can afford something until they can afford it. Like, think about that for a second. Like, no one ever bought anything that they knew that they wanted until they wanted it. Like there was a sale that took place at some point. It's not like I wanted these shoes. Like, before I wanted these shoes, I didn't want these shoes. Like, it always happens. So anyways, the point being is look in the mirror when you don't win. Let other people tell you that it was a collective fall. And look out the window when you do win. It'll change your game forever. Measure the right things.
Measuring the right things, we'll just kind of go over quickly.
Yeah.
But the question that we like to ask is, if you are on vacation and you could only get 3 numbers from your team, this one's for the managers, I guess, or for the salespeople who have prospects that are being managed by other people. If you only get 3 numbers from your team, and you have to decide from those 3 numbers if you need to fly home to save the sinking ship or if you're okay, those are your KPIs. We see too many salespeople and sales managers who are measuring so many different things, and there are a lot of things to measure, but they're going to be different depending on the life cycle, the stage and the life cycle of your company that you're in.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, if you're in a leadership position, ask yourself that question and try to really narrow it down to 3, because otherwise it gets really tough to measure. I don't want to spend too much more time on that because we're getting to the real good stuff.
So key performance indicators are about predictive analytics. So remember that, predictive. What are the 3 metrics where you have to decide if you have to get off of the hammock and go home, or if you would stay on vacay? Sorry.
No worries. Go ahead.
This is kind of like us. Okay. Either they see you coming from a mile away, or there's 2 types of salespeople. Either there's the salesperson where they see you coming from a mile away, and they know you're a salesperson, and you're like, hey, yes, I'm a salesperson, and it's okay that you like me, and yes, I have a quota, and you respect me for telling you that. And yes, my job is to sell you something, but I promise that I'm not going to sell it to you if you're not going to get any value from it, and I'm not going to be pushy. So yeah, I'm a salesperson, but if this isn't the right fit, then we'll part ways as friends. Until then, let's see if it is. That's one lane. I'm a salesperson. I own it, and you'll like me for it. The other lane is, I'm not a salesperson at all. I'm a consultant, right? Like, listen, this is totally a united front, and I'm going to work with you to try to find the best solution. And there's no time, and don't worry about my quota. And my job is not to sell you. My job is to help you, and right, all that, all that. There's that person, right? And that's a lane. That's a good lane. Where everybody screws up is where they start to merge lanes. Like, my job is to help you, not to sell you. But if you buy today, you get a discount. I mean, where's my credibility? Where's my trust, right? Or yes, I'm a salesperson and I do have a quota, but my job's not to sell you. My job's to help you. Church? No, I like it.
So
anyway,
we're getting. Does anybody want like 10 more minutes of this? Are we good, or should we just get out of here? Okay,
6 minutes.
Cool. We'll let them kick us off if they need to, because we got some really good stuff coming up.
We have 3 minutes and 53 seconds. We won't go too much far after that.
Right.
Okay. These are actual nuggets, though. This is what you actually wanted when you thought you were. This is what you thought you were going to get from us. So, storytelling. Why do people like books? Like, why would I watch the Jack Ryan show on Amazon, but my mom would read the Tom Clancy book? Because in her head, Jack Ryan looks like Denzel Washington. And when you have a book, right, like you can start to create your own images based on these descriptive words, right? Like, what do they do in books, right? Like, they use these amazing descriptive words. It still gives you the ownership and the flexibility, but it still puts it within the confines of what the story is, right? Great salespeople are the best storytellers, hands down, period. Paint the picture. Like, use those sorts of words, right? Say, imagine this. Like, actually put them in the picture, right? Like, picture this, imagine this. It actually works. Tell your story, and they will tell you theirs. True story.
Yep.
Garrett and I were working together when I was engaged. And I would show up to my meetings right on time, every time, as a manager or a closer. And I would say, I'm so sorry, I should have been a couple minutes early. My fiance thought it was more important to discuss bougainvilleas versus tulips for our upcoming wedding than for me to be here and do my job. And every single time, the person on the other end of the line would either say, ha, don't worry about it, it gets easier on the second marriage. Or, I've been married for 30 years, trust me, happy wife, happy life. Either way it goes, I built rapport in the first 3.5 seconds. People really like your stories. The only way that you're going to get someone to open up to you is if you open up to them. And you're going to have to find creative and innovative ways to tell your story. But trust me, if you show up like a beast and you tell your story first and it's compelling and interesting enough, they will tell you theirs.
And the last one is third-party stories.
Yeah,
So the question is, how does Colin,
half black, half white, Jewish, 34-year-old man in West Hollywood, California,
sell to a 75-year-old grandmother who lives in Maine?
I don't. I let another 75-year-old grandmother who lives in Missouri sell the 75-year-old grandmother who lives in Maine. Third-party stories.
And what he means by that is, as a salesperson, you should constantly be collecting success stories, even failure stories that have a lesson to the end of them, all kinds of different stories, so that when Colin calls that 75-year-old grandmother in Maine, he goes, you know, you remind me of Ethel, the woman in Missouri
Because
who
no
I worked
baby
with,
was ever born with the name Ethel.
Because she had the exact same problem as you, and my company helped her in this way. So having a stockpile of those kinds of stories so that you can relate to people who you may not have that much in common with, but be able to connect them even just psychologically with somebody who they do have something in common with, is a really, really powerful tactic.
Yep.
And we highly recommend filling pages and pages of your sales playbook with stories that fit that bill.
Oh, you know what? You remind me of Ethel. Ethel had the same concerns you did. So you know what we did with Ethel? And now she's my best customer. Third-party stories. Can we talk about Sharon Choice customers really quick?
I don't think
Skip
we have time.
it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's just skip the last half then, so that we can
All right.
get you guys some more
Yeah,
nuggets.
we're going to skip this too.
All right.
Oh, I love this.
You guys on
slide.
LinkedIn?
Who uses LinkedIn to
Everybody
sell?
on LinkedIn?
To prospect, to sell?
Who's
to
not
connect?
on LinkedIn? Raise your hand. Jerry. All right, so a couple of you. 4 out of 230. So there's a reason why LinkedIn was acquired by Microsoft for $27 billion. Billion with a B. And we're going to tell you why you're really bad at it. Or
All right.
using
Yeah,
it.
so LinkedIn is an incredibly powerful tool, especially if you're doing prospecting, cold calling, to go in there, do your research, find out who you need to be talking to. And there are so many ninja ways to hack LinkedIn and get more value out of it.
Tell them the story. We
So
have
the
time.
first thing you're doing is you're using the wrong photo.
We have like 2 more slides.
The good salesperson, the good salesperson, he's got a nice professional LinkedIn photo, right? He's got a headshot, he's looking good, he's got a collar, maybe a tie.
Crisp.
The elevated salesperson may not have that. So let me illustrate this by a story. We've already told you we were selling B2B identity management software. Our buyers were CTOs of fairly large companies.
Engineers.
One of our best sales guys, who may or may not have been the person who flipped over the couch cushion,
Same person.
his picture was him next to a really cool statue of R2-D2. Now, he likes Star Wars. He didn't love Star Wars, but who does love Star Wars?
You're being kind. He might not have ever even seen the movie.
He saw the movie.
He saw the movie?
His buyers and the people that he was engaging with were definitely the Star Wars types. And so he, as he stalks them and links up with them on LinkedIn and makes a call to them or sends them an email and they look him up, they're going to see that he's a Star Wars-ish guy.
Yeah.
And that is that icebreaker, that initial conversation could just be about, hey, where did you get that picture with the life-size R2-D2? Was that the real R2-D2 from the movie? And on and on.
They picked up the phone. Sales is all about prolonged gratification. So it takes 18 touch points to get a sale. So like when this guy left a voicemail, he didn't leave a voicemail because he thought they were going to call him back. He left a voicemail because when he LinkedIn stalked them and they saw that he was looking at him on LinkedIn, they'd go, oh man, that was the same guy that left me a voicemail. And then when he sends the email, because he's not going to reply to him on LinkedIn, he's going to be like, oh, that was the guy that had the funny R2-D2 picture on LinkedIn who just sent me an email. And then when he leaves another voicemail and like all of these touch points, and then here's the key to outbound prospecting. You always are going to get one shot. So at some point, this person is going to pick up the phone. And then this person, we won't say his name, he's got one shot to be perfect. But he's been perfect all along with his approach. He didn't leave a voicemail and said, hey, this is, call me back. He said, hey, this is no need to call me back. I just wanted to let you know I'm about to press send on this email.
I like that you're combining the last 2 slides. This is good because we're.
That's a beast. Did you guys, are we going over that?
We're gonna go over that. I think if we have time, but I like it.
Okay.
So anyway, maybe a headshot is the right photo, but maybe it's not. Is the point to that?
Yep. This is easy. If you don't have 500 connections, then you're just not doing a good enough job. I know some people tell you like only connect with people like when you want like meaningful relationships, and we just strongly disagree.
Until you get to 500.
Until you get to 500.
And the reason for that is because, and those of you who use Facebook know, once you get to 500,
LinkedIn
doesn't know the difference between 500 and 50,000. It's 500 plus.
Once you use LinkedIn, you said Facebook.
I did?
Yeah.
Oh. No. LinkedIn.
Yeah. But do you get that? Like, it's a layer of credibility. Like, I don't care who you're, if I'm hiring someone, if I'm talking to someone, and they have 500 plus, that's all I care about. That's a worthwhile conversation to have inside of a sales capacity, because at least I know they've got that layer of credibility. If you have 498, I know that you don't care. Oh, we talked about that. You guys know on LinkedIn they can see when you look at them, right? That's a touch point. Like you're doing it on purpose because you know where the finish line is and they don't. Like, oh yeah, that's the person that left me the voicemail that told them not to call me back and then emailed me some funny stuff but didn't ask me to buy and then just looked at me on LinkedIn. Who is this guy? Oh, R2-D2. Huh, it's funny. I like Star Wars a lot. Same guy scraped our CRM on his first week. The same salesperson looked at every single deal that we had, then looked at the decision maker for all those deals, because your CRM is your single point of truth, so you should have all that information in there. Looked at all the decision makers, then cross-referenced them on LinkedIn, figured out which ones worked at a new company, and sold every single one of them. Because they already purchased on before.
And it doesn't even have to be a decision maker. It could be hopefully happy users, happy end users.
Abundance. Yep. Yeah, and then this is just obvious, but like, you're not posting on LinkedIn because you want to enrich your professional network, even though like it sounds really good. Like you're doing it to enrich your professional ego. Like that's the real deal. Same thing with Twitter, same thing with Instagram, same thing with Facebook. I know I'm hurting a couple of your feelings in here, but it's the truth. So play to it. One of the most open emails that have ever been sent, I think it was like an 83% open rate, according to HubSpot, and I can get the real data, was it was a Manchester United, some guy sent a tweet about the Manchester United soccer team, and the subject line was, I forgot the name of the company, let's call it Acme Corp, how Acme Corp and Manchester United are taking over the world. And then inside, he was just drawing comparisons, and I have no idea if the guy replied to him, but he opened the email. Like, to get an 83% open rate is like unheard of, and so just keep that in mind. Like, take advantage of human nature, which is ego.
And then the last one here is competition. So finding a way to bury the names of your competitors somewhere on your LinkedIn profile is a great way to show up when people search for them. So if you have a previous job and you say, I sold against XYZ companies, and you're still selling, ideally still selling against XYZ companies, hide it down there somewhere, not where they're going to necessarily see it. But when they search for it, you're going to show up in their search.
That's good. I don't do that. I like that.
Yeah, you should do that. Okay, anyway. I don't think we need
No, but let's just do one. Just pizza bet.
Okay, do the pizza bet.
Pizza bet.
This is such good stuff.
No,
I wish
and
we had more
referrals.
time, guys.
All right, this
Colin
is it.
talked too much,
this is
as
it.
usual.
We got pizza bet and we got referrals, and we're done. Here's the pizza bet, okay? Game changer. You're calling someone, you're emailing them, you're LinkedIn stalking, they're not picking up the phone. So you send one last email. And you don't make it cheesy with like their face on a milk carton. Like that stuff's not actually funny. Seriously.
Cat gifts.
Any gifts are just really, they just don't work. All it does is just show that you're not really in tune with the customer's buying persona. So what you do instead, which I think is the antithesis of this, is you title the subject line wager. And most people will open up that email. Obviously you're busy, you haven't had time to reach back out to me, I'll make it worth your while. I know you're in San Francisco, I can tell by your ego, I mean your Twitter, that you're a San Francisco Giants fan, okay? So, the Giants are playing the Patriots this weekend. If the Giants win... Niners.
You're mixing sports.
The Niners. If the Niners win, I will send you a large pizza and I'll never contact you again. If the Patriots win, you just have to give me 20 minutes. And I promise you, if you don't like what I have to say, I'll never call you again. I probably did this 300 times. I bought one pizza. Just because that's not, people don't want a free pizza. People want to be compelled. Like every response was almost the same. I appreciate your creativity. I've just been busy. I appreciate your creativity. This is just not for me. I appreciate your creativity. Let's do it next week. Or I appreciate your creativity. This isn't for us, but I'm going to take you up on it, and I like the Vito's pizza. And then last but not least is getting referrals from no's. This is just a real nugget. Everybody wants to get referrals from people that buy from you. But if you're an elevated salesperson, like people love you and they don't want to say no to you, but they will. But they love you because you loved them when they said no to you. And so if they love you and they don't want to hurt you, but they're not going to buy from you, but you did such a damn good job, you let them know, hey, listen, I'm judged by 2 pieces of criterion from my boss. One is obviously sales. You told me that's not going to work out. The other is referrals. So I promise you that if you can just shoot me over a couple referrals, A, you'll make me look really good, but B, I'll treat them with the same respect that I treated you, and I'll make sure that I won't be a hard closer or I won't be whatever the other lane is. Every time, these guys are getting 3 referrals from no's. I walked into a Porsche dealership as a punk 23-year-old kid with Air Force Ones on, obviously, and sagging pants and like a hat, and I had the money to get this Panamera. And I walked in, and this woman looked at me. And she just looked back down, and she started working again. Like, she just like completely like ignored me. So I walked over to the other salesperson, and I said, I'm gonna make her pay for this. Like, I am going to get this car, and she could have got me because she saw me first. And so finally I buy the car, and like the guy's walking me out, and you know, I'm like, oh, by the way, like tell that salesperson that ignored me, like never judge a book by its cover, because I came in here to buy. And he looks at me, laughs. He's like, she wasn't judging you, bro. She doesn't talk to anybody. I go, what do you mean? She goes, every day she has 30 to 40 people that are inbounds from past referrals. She's been working here for 20 years. She gets about 100 inbound referrals from her personal network every month. She doesn't even have to work inside of the office. She's only here because she has ride and drives. Get referrals. If you don't like cold calling, make sure you get referrals. And then that's it.
So hopefully, guys, it's come across. We love sales. We love selling. We're really passionate about this. We could talk about it forever.
Don't forget the best part.
But don't forget the best part.
This is the best part, the chase, the anticipation. At some point, you're all going to be beasts and ninjas, and I just don't want you to forget that the best part in the movie, the reason you pay for the movie, is the delta between now and when you're a beast. So please just love all of this and engage in it and really be present, because that's ultimately the best sign that you have a high EQ. And I think the moral of the story is that a high EQ is directly correlated to a high sales IQ.
So we'll stick around for questions. Thank you guys so much.